One of the lettering styles that we have a name for in silent movie titling is called eccentric title. We first see this name appear in the late 1910s with William Gordon's book, Lettering for Commercial Purposes. I would presume the name comes from the fact that it is a uniform lettering style with common characteristics so that directors knew what to expect, and yet it gave lettering artists the leeway to be able to individualize the lettering that they were doing and match the mood of the movie. We're going to be studying a specific form of eccentric title that was created in 1918 and first published in the number 4 modern pen lettering textbook that later became the Speedball textbook. This eccentric title is interesting because it was published in 2 different forms. The eccentric title we're going to be studying is from the original plate from William Gordon. This lettering was originally completed, and then later Gordon, for a different purpose, inked out the title and inked out the bottom so that he could publish it in the 5th edition of the Speedball textbook. You'll notice that the title changes, as well as the first 2 lines, and the last line changes. One of the reasons that I'm interested in studying this particular letter form is because it's very instructive to the letterer who's using a broad-edged pen. It will give us practice in some of the characteristics that we need in order to master the broad-edged pen. If you're an experienced lettering artist, some of these characteristics you probably already know how to do. If you're a beginner, it's going to give you the skills to do almost any kind of lettering with a broad-edged pen. We're going to be using the Speedball C5 pen. This is a very flexible pen. If I take this pen with no ink and I simply press on it, you'll see that there are 3 tines that split within this pen itself. You can have a thin line and a thick line. So let's talk about some of the benefits of learning this particular brand of eccentric title lettering, especially the lowercase lettering. First, we're going to be working at a 1-inch height. The 1-inch height is important, and you'll see me working on grid paper throughout this series at a 1-inch X height whenever possible, and one of the reasons is because it promotes whole arm movement. The show card writers were very interested in the concept of whole arm movement. William Gordon himself was an instructor of handwriting. Handwriting in the Spencerian method stressed whole arm movement and muscle memory. He talks about this in many of his articles and says this is why we're called show card writers instead of sign writers, because we write instead of letter like a sign man would letter. So whole arm movement is one of the practices that's important in writing letters. It keeps you from using just your fingers to manipulate the pen. One of the other factors with this alphabet, and specifically with the C5 pen, is because of its flexibility, we'll be working with pressure and release. When we put pen pressure on the pen itself, we'll get a thicker line. And when we ease off pressure, we'll get a thinner line, even when we're drawing on the broad stroke of the flat or broad-edged pen. If you've come from pointed pen lettering, this is second nature to you. If you've come from broad edge lettering, it might not be second nature yet, but we'll work with pressure and release lettering. Another thing it's going to teach you, because of the split stem characteristic of many of these letters, is pen manipulation. We'll be using the corner of the pen on many of these letters in order to get the thin strokes. And then the last part is this particular alphabet has deceptive branching. We're used to working with branching coming out of a stem stroke, but this branching is going to come out of a thin split stroke. And so we'll talk about where the branching comes from. And in this particular case, it's coming from a Roman form, and it's a high branched letter, but it's deceptive because of the split. So follow along, and we'll talk about some of the individual lettering characteristics and the basic strokes of eccentric title.